Welcome back to Sound Learn, and welcome to the first episode of what I'm calling Deep Cut Deep Dive. Bit of a tongue twister, but I'm going to stick with it. And it's a little bit different from the other videos that I've been making so far, in the sense that it's going to be a little bit more stream of consciousness, a little bit longer probably. So it's more of a maybe like a podcast style thing where I'm just going to do a deep dive into a track that I've worked on, produced, written on, etc., mixed. In this case, I've done all of the above. For this track. This first track that we're going to look at is a track that I kind of created with a friend in a band that we call Loneborn, and it was a single that we released last year, and so it's been enough time to where I have some separation from it, and I feel like I'll be able to dive into it and hopefully hear things from a new perspective and just talk about them as I go. So not a lot of cuts here. It's just going to be straight. We're going to dive into the song and really check it out. So let's just get straight into it. All right, so we open up the session here. It's a Pro Tools session, and this is kind of where the song we just built it out. Even I think from the demo here, we went from demo all the way to final product in the same session. You'll see here we ended up at like V10, so we did like 10 different versions of this. Let's just maybe start playing it so you can hear a little bit of it. So for the intro, I think we wanted to start with something that felt really big and lush and grandiose. So that then we could bring it down for the verse. Chorus. And then after the chorus, we go back into kind of a reprise of the intro, but a little bit more open, more vibed out. So yeah, that's enough to I guess get the idea of what we were going for with this song. I think when we started writing this song, the initial demo I think was very much inspired by like Parcels, something like that. We wanted to do something with a lot of nicely stacked vocal harmonies. We wanted the vocals to be a little bit softer, and we wanted something that had groove without getting too complicated. So it is a very straightforward kind of 4 on the floor sort of beat. Let's maybe start with a few of the drums here. Let's talk about drums for a second. I tend to start my tracks with maybe just some chords and definitely drums. In this case, we did start with the chords. Let's actually start with that. I was going to start with the drums, but let's just start with the chords first. This was on oh man, I'm already forgetting the name of it because I already sold it. But this was like a little Yamaha CP, kind of like little. I think that's even what it's just called, the Yamaha CP. It's from the CP series. It just has a lot of like classic electric piano sounds, and I was really obsessed with it for a bit. And I was messing around one day and came up with this sort of like little riff. Now, I'll be the first to tell you I'm not a super great keyboard player, so I definitely had to do some editing here to clean it up a little bit. So sometimes that's what you gotta get. Like in a perfect world, if I had more budget, this is something I would have done. I would have probably tried to hire a studio musician to come in and play what I played 10 times better. But sometimes you got to make do with what you have. And in this case, this is very much passable. You clean it up a little bit. And so you hear here, again, it's a very classic sort of electric keyboard sort of sound, maybe like a Rhodes Wurlitzer sort of sound. And I actually did record this in mono. You had the ability to record it in stereo, but in this case, it was early demo, and so I recorded in mono, and it ended up just staying that way. So we started with that, and we very quickly knew that we wanted to do something pretty straightforward. Now, when I'm working with this particular project, we always start our drums with just drum programming. We use addictive drums here. And so we generally start with just these kind of, let me ungroup these, with these kind of realistic fake drums. And this is kind of where the song idea started, generally. Let's bring up the master a little bit. So this is where the demo started. As you can see, it's very much just a loop. And the drums are we're trying to keep them very punchy and just to the point. Even the fills are very much on beat, not trying to be too busy. And so here we just move to like just some more open chords instead of the more like rhythmic sort of chords on the roads there. And so, like I said, we will generally start with these fake drums, and obviously they don't sound ideal. That's not what you want your final product to sound like. So eventually we add, some samples. In this case, we found like a more clubby sort of kick to make it have a lot more low end and feel punchier. So it feels like a more like classic sort of disco 4 on the floor, right? And we have a little bit of a kick snare sample here, which sounds like a little bit of a lo-fi tambourine snare just hit here. So you start adding these all together, you start getting a bit of a groove. Add a little bit more rhythm. The next thing I think we recorded was a shaker. So you start feeling a little bit of a groove here, and that's what we were focused on. We wanted to have a groove that by itself already feels like it's carrying itself. So with very minimal sort of things here, we just have obviously the keyboard, fake drums, a few samples, and a shaker, and we already feel like it's feeling alive. To finally add a bit more of that kind of life and vibrance to the drums, we did record some real drums over that. And so again, we don't have the ideal scenario where we could record real drums the way we would like to, really mic it up and just have like a great kit. But again, you make do with what you have, and even just adding a little bit of that real life sort of flair brings this whole thing to life. So already there you've got a really nice groove. Let's see if we had any other elements. I don't think we did. Cool. Next thing you would want to add here, that we did add, the one place we didn't really spare too much of an expense was on the bass. I initially had played a bass line, which I'm sure I have somewhere in there. Let's see if we can find it. Let's go back really early. I'm open up these playlists. Usually the one that has a bit of a comp tends to be, so it looks like maybe 12. Let's go to 12. Might have been my bass comp. All right, so here I found the original bass line that I had going. This is what I had played. So again, not bad. But just kind of like following what you would expect like a typical bassist to do. What we ended up with though is we got this bass player, Alex Diaz, to come in and play on it. He's got a way nicer touch and feel, I thought, compared to what I was doing. And he definitely brought some life to the song. Just has more like natural feel. Especially in the verses where you can really hear it. And so what we did there was just, I showed him the song, he kind of learned what I was doing, and then we just let him play. And so you can see that there's a ton of playlists. This was us just letting him loop around the song and play and play and play, and eventually we comped something that we liked together out of all the different takes he did. Let's talk about the intro a little bit more. If we can hear it again, we've got these little vocal samples here. And these are literally this is just me singing like a ah, and we just looped a little bit of it. And so there's the ah, there's the harmony, and then there's a third harmony here. And we just looped it to kind of give it that weird sort of loopy robotic sort of feel. Kind of like pumping, pulsating. You bring up the reverb. There's like a high falsetto that obviously got looped there. And we cut a lot of the low on that one, almost made it sound very like robotic and sampled there. You add it with these other two vocals that we have over here that aren't looped, and you get a big, nice sounding kind of choir. I have a tendency to cake, a lot of the background reverb vocals and with a lot of reverb and just make them sound very spacey. I like to do that when I can, because then it gives me a lot of room for the lead vocal to kind of be up front and do its own thing. So let's see what else we had here. We had a little Glock. So that was an actual, I think, Glock that we recorded, and we just kind of put a lot of like spring reverb on that to make it, space out. Very subtle when you hear it in the full mix. But it adds a little bit of sharpness and attack to that main melody that also the guitars are playing. So when you combine this and this, let's see what else we have. I think we have another synth lead maybe doing the same thing. Yep. And that's like a Jupiter, it's a Jupiter 8 wannabe, it's a model of it. It's obviously not the real thing, but again, work within your limits. It's the best you can do. Then, sometimes it's pretty convincing. We have a high pad. Let's see what it's doing. Just a nice little flute pad, just floating out there in space. Just to add texture there. These are the kind of subtle things you want to do to like fill up the spaces. It depends for what you're going for. For a lot of people, going this far might feel overproduced. We felt like it was working. So all together, let's hear it. So that pad is super, super subtle, but it's there. So here we go into the verse. So this is a fun thing that we can point out here. These sort of vocals in the back are actually, I believe it's just this section of the initial intro. We grabbed that, copied it over here, and then we reversed it. So you've got something that sounds a little bit more, it sounds a little bit like, I don't know what the word is. I don't know if mysterious is the word, but there's something about it that kind of works. Doesn't quite sound as human, so it's a fun little thing to throw in there sometimes, and it's subtle, but it's in there, and it helps build up into the chorus, because we've got our verse we wanted to strip down, and then it just kind of loops the chords here, but then we wanted to add some kind of thing without being too obvious to ramp up into the chorus, and that's what we decided to do. Let's talk about the chorus. The chorus, we definitely wanted to accentuate a lot of stacked hits. So we wanted this to feel like a band, kind of like when a band really like unites together and hits all the same marks. that feels really good. And so the first way we decided to do that before we did drums or anything out was, again, the Rhodes, kind of marking this. So we have those kind of syncopated marks there, and then naturally we followed that with the drums. Where are you guys hiding away? So we go. And so that also came, if you notice, the chorus already dropped there. That's already the chorus, but the beat itself hasn't dropped until we've already done 2 measures of the chorus there. And the reason we did that was because we're always trying to find ways to try something a little bit different. We tend to fall into these kind of pockets where we always end up doing the same thing. We have these bad habits of, like, when you get straight into a chorus, you just do what you did in the intro but bigger, and it's like right on the one. So for this one, we were thinking, like, what could we do a little bit different here so that it doesn't feel like, oh, okay, here's the chorus, we're dropping on the one. And we decided, like, what if we just try to mark exactly what's, unify everybody and try to follow the vocals together so that we kind of throw people off a little bit. And so that's what we had here. So we get to the chorus and it doesn't quite drop, keeps you in suspense for a little bit longer, and then you get your 4 on the floor beat. And we've got a little Wurlitzer lead here, and this is from the same keyboard I was talking about, and it has some built-in effects in here. I think it's a delay that we cranked up and put the feedback really crazy, and some reverb, maybe some chorus effect on there, and got this really cool sound to kind of like cool, almost like a little wah. And we're using this very percussively, only like really. And we also turn that into like a little lead in the post chorus, so you'll hear that in a second. But it works really cool as like a percussive sort of thing. And so this is, again, the intro, but now reworked in a different format. The percussive and rhythmic elements are very much the intro, but then we changed a few things where now the vocals are doing something a little bit different. We dropped the whole loopy sort of thing, and now it's more just big vocal stack in the background. Right, so we've got that. Feels a little bit more like a post-chorus, something a little bit different. The bass, I believe, is about the same. And now we've got this lead that becomes the new kind of hook. And we're using that same sort of patch that we had put together. That it's kind of like a weird little Wurlitzer with like a wah and a lot of reverb. It's a really cool sound. We were pretty psyched when we found that one. So the hi-hat seems to be doing the same thing that it was. But then I think we added this new synth, which is a little bit of an arpeggiator. Again, very subtle, hidden in there, but it helps, make it feel a little bit different. When you're writing a song and you're producing it, you obviously want to, keep things so that it depends on what kind of song you're writing, but when you're writing a song like this that feels like it's going to be a single, it's a little bit more on the poppy side. You want to try to find a way to keep the song familiar so that it doesn't feel like you're going into an entirely new section that completely changes the song, but you also don't want to be doing complete just copy paste because then it starts getting really repetitive really quick, and that's something that people can catch on. And this is also when we started introducing conga in here. This is Jonathan playing, I believe. Let's check this out. Obviously keg that in reverb in this case, so we want to hide it a little bit. And the reason we brought it in here is because it's going to play a bigger role later on in the song. So we wanted to introduce it so that when it does come in, it doesn't feel like, where the hell did this conga come from? So you're mostly really hearing the lower conga there, but it's kind of almost like implied. It feels cool. Got your shaker, etc. And we go straight into verse 2, I believe. And so here we're blending the post-chorus and the intro again, and tying them in together with this kind of arpeggiator that keeps going throughout. But we're bringing back this original guitar riff over here. And here we took away the kick, to kind of give the song a bit of a suspense, sort of like. And so this is something fun here, because like, we intended for this to be the second verse. And we were just gonna start something over this. But we kind of thought it was cool to like keep it in suspense and do like another post-chorus. Crazy, I know, but. And it's a little bit more of an open, sort of big, hard driving sort of thing. We have one vocal actually that's doing the high falsetto thing. And then we go into the actual second verse. And here we wanted to cut away the drums and just keep it little. Another way to mark everybody together. And again, this is where it gets tricky, because you're going into a second verse, you're using the same chords, and you start thinking like, all right, how are we going to do this without sounding exactly like the first verse, and how are we going to change this up enough so that it sounds, interesting enough for the listener to want to keep engaged and keep listening. So here again, we went back into cutting off the snare, and just kept a kick 4 on the floor for the first half of the verse, and then again the band comes together to mark those 2 big chord changes. And when we do introduce the drums back, now we're going into like a more shuffly hi-hat sort of eighth note sort of thing here, whereas before we were just like, now we're doing a double eighth note sort of thing, or is it 16th notes? I don't even know. Yeah, with a little bit of an open hi-hat. So the idea here is that we're ramping up the energy. And we try to keep the second verse really short here, because in this case, for this particular song, it's meant to be a fun, straightforward sort of song, and we weren't going to beat around the bush. It's like, let's not try to say too much here. Let's not force trying to say too much. Sometimes a song is meant to be simple and fun, and that's what this song was to us. So we were like, let's just get back to the chorus, which is, I think, what the strong suit of this song is. There we go. Listen up, listen up, listen up. There's no reason to be so uptight. So we introduced new guitar, because we are now going into that new drum beat. A little bit more disco, more groovy, more on the hi-hat, and we wanted to reflect that also with the guitar. Kind of moving at that same percussive rhythm. Listen up, listen up, listen up. But we're still keeping that same sort of groove that we had before. And now we go straight into the bridge. This is a really fun bridge. We had a lot of fun with this one. We tried to do something different, and there's something that inherently feels a little bit sinister about here because of the kind of chord progression that we went for, and we found some really cool loops to kind of work with here. Let's see what we have. What really made us take this to a certain place, I think, was this guitar riff. Let's start with this. Yeah, this chord progression kind of changes the vibe of the song. And then we have this lead here. There's a point where we even considered just taking this groove and making it a whole other song with, because we liked it a lot. And sometimes I think that's a good thing. If you can get a bridge that sounds unique enough to where you're like, man, this could be its own song, and I really like it, you're in a good place. So we decided to keep it instead of turning it into a new song. Again, congas, this is where they start coming in. We wanted to go into kind of like a tropical sort of thing here. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this loop, let's go back. This is what really, I believe what we're taking here, yeah, I can see from the title here, this is actually V4, a demo version of the song, like the full stereo mix that we dropped in there, and then we just did some crazy stuff with it. Let me see if I can figure out exactly what we did. I think the biggest thing going right now is this trem control, but let's hear what it sounds like just as is right now. And just hearing it for the first time in a long time, I think this might be the intro, but like really messed with. All right, so let's take everything off. Take the mega verb. Let's take the EQ off. Let's see what it sounded like before. Yeah, this is literally, so this is the, it sounds so wild without all the effects. So obviously this is the post-chorus, but this is how it was in the version 4 of the demo. And so then we EQ'd it, made it really thin, I believe. Give it kind of like a radio effect, right? Then we use this trem control. Let's open this guy up. Oh, he's already open. And this is a cool plugin by Good Hertz that I really like because it can do some really interesting rhythmic stuff. I think this is probably just a preset. Looks like it is. The Oompa preset. And it already makes it sound kind of crazy. It's like an off sort of like offbeat sort of like stabby thing. And so it's only really grabbing the kind of like very subtle melodic elements about it and gets rid of all the other information. So you end up with this really cool thing. Then we mega verbed it to just make it big and wild and weird. And so this ends up being this like really weird thing that's subtle in there, but really makes this bridge interesting when it drops. It helps the groove a lot. It helps make it a lot dancier, which is what we wanted with this bridge. Let's keep going and listen to everything else. Oh, I almost forgot. Something that's making this really fun rhythmically is our little drum machine, which is this guy right here. So I just kind of like programmed a little beat here. I had just gotten it maybe a few weeks before, and I really wanted to incorporate it into a song, and so programmed a little drum beat here, and all you got to really do is play it. In this case, I have this right now going. So yeah, I made a cool little thing there, and I thought it was interesting to, before we even added drums, I think we started with this little groove, and then I think we started with the next thing we added was probably this riff. Again, here's Alex on the bass. So, cool bridge. We keep building up. I believe we bring in some of these elements later on. I believe this is the synth that slowly starts to fade in. Yeah. And so this bridge is just kind of building on that. So you'll notice here I had these double sort of guitars. There's a bit of a flanger on that. But when the vocals come in, I decided to get rid of one of them to kind of make space for the vocals. There was a point where I started feeling really overloaded, so I got rid of that. Let's see what I did here. I'm thinking we could get lost for a while. I'm thinking we could get lost for a while. So for the bridge vocals, I thought it'd be interesting to go completely dry on these vocals, whereas before they're very much spacey, got a lot of reverb, delay, stuff like that. I thought for this, because it's such a kind of a groovy section and it's very rhythmic and dancey, one of the biggest enemies to something being dancey is too much reverb or delays, because it throws off the the rhythmic element because you're playing with delays and reverbs, and it kind of cakes everything together. So going dry in something like this helps a lot to keep a groove strong.
I'm thinking we could get lost for a while. I'm thinking we could get lost for a while. I'm thinking we could get lost for a while and forget each other's names. I'm thinking we could get lost for a while. I'm thinking we could get lost for a while.
And then the sort of harmony here, I wanted to hide it behind everything and add a lot of crazy effects here because we have such a dry thing.
And forget each other's names. I'm thinking we could get lost for a while. I'm thinking we could get lost for.
And I think the idea, what I was thinking here is that same way this second guitar over here was very much like this weird tremolo sort of thing, and like very much like has like a wah sort of thing. I wanted to do something similar with the second vocal here.
I'm thinking we could get lost for a while. I'm thinking we could get lost for a while. I'm thinking we could get lost for a while and forget each other's names.
What else do we have? I think we have a rising little synth here. This just has a long portamento, and we're just octaving it up there. It's the same synth pad that we were using in the intro, just playing it a little bit differently. And this gave it like a fun kind of like spacey sort of old school 70s disco vibe, we thought. Again, pretty subtle, but it adds to it. And we just kind of cut everything here on the second half of the bridge. This is a pretty popular technique in pop music before you're about to do a big drop, to kind of build up, then suck everything away. I like to call it the vacuum effect. It almost feels like everything goes. It's like your typical thing that you see in like a big Hollywood movie before a giant explosion. It's like the boom and then the big boom. So this is our musical interpretation of that, if you can imagine that. And here we did introduce, I believe, a new guitar riff. I hear it, but I don't. Oh, there it is. Which we'll eventually hear in the final chorus. Thought it was fun to just add one new little riff to kind of keep it fresh. And again here, this goes back to having these big stacked harmonies and stuff. Goes back to the bit of the inspiration of Parcels. Obviously they do it way, way, way better because they're actually like legitimate vocalists that can do it very well, and they're way more in tune with each other. But in this case, I think that's what we were going for here. A nice, lush, stacked sort of vocal with harmonies. Bringing on a low one for the second time around. And then right before we cut everything off, before we get to the final chorus, so this is again just the intro, just full on, totally different groove, full on big. We brought back those vocals from the beginning, and then we just end it straight to the point. Try to keep it simple. And so what we try to do there at the end was a blend of all of the elements that we introduced throughout the song, try to bring them all together at the end without overloading it, so that you have this kind of big flashy ending. Something that was interesting about this song is that we made the choice not to go back to the chorus. Obviously, as you saw there, it's very common for after bridge, you would expect to go back to the chorus at least one more time. We do that a lot. And again, with this song, we wanted to try to do something a little bit different. And, our kind of like strategy there was like, let's finish big, let's finish strong. And if the song is good enough, hopefully what the effect it has is if you finish a song and you're left feeling like, man, I wish I would have heard the chorus one more time, hopefully it's enough incentive to go back and listen to the song again. So that was kind of our thought process there. And obviously this was a very just brief overview. We're probably like at, what are we? I don't know. 30, 40 minutes. But yeah, it's a brief overview. I could be on this for hours. I didn't get too deep into the mixing and all that stuff, but it's just a general, like, thought process on what we were thinking when we were writing the song and producing it, and a little bit of the mixing. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you picked up a few things here and there. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'm also going to go ahead and link the stems to this song. We did release the stems along with this song when the song came out. Feel free to do whatever you want with them. They are, Creative Commons license, so you can literally incorporate them in your song, do whatever you want, remix the song, steal the samples, steal the loops. I don't really care. So have fun with it, and hopefully I'll be doing more of these, not only with songs that I've worked on, but hopefully with other artists soon. Yeah. So if you liked it, thumbs up, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Hope to see you soon again. More videos next week.